Hello and welcome to a first look at creating calculations in Excel. Before we get into creating the calculations, I just want to show you a few of the important keys on the keyboard. And those keys are the equal and plus key, the subtraction key, the multiply key and the divide key. That's on the main keyboard. Over on the right, if you have a standard keyboard, you'll find the number keypad and you'll find the division symbol, multiply symbol, subtract symbol and addition symbol all positioned around the top right edge of that number keypad. Bear in mind that with the multiply symbol and the plus symbol on the main keyboard, you need to use the shift key to get those characters. Okay, so with that covered, we'll go on and begin to create our first calculations. I've set up a little spreadsheet here, and this is formatted in such a way to show the different symbols for division, multiplication, addition and subtraction. And you'll see we have a set of very simple calculations involving the number 10. So let's get started here then. I already have F1 highlighted, which is where I want the result to appear. Now if I press the equals key, you will see that it adds a couple of characters there, a tick and a cross. The cross is to cancel the formula entry and the tick is to accept it. Basically they perform the same function as the escape key for cancel and the enter key for accept. So now I've pressed the equals key, I can go on and start building my calculation. And the first thing I need to do is click on the first number I want to include, and that's going to be this cell here, C1. So simply click on it. And as you can see, that value, or the cell reference, more importantly, goes into the cell. It's a division calculation, so now on the keyboard I'm going to press the divide symbol and then finally click on the second value that I want to include in my calculation, which is the value in E1. So we see there Excel has built up the formula for me, equals C1 divided by E1. And you'll notice it color codes the cell entries as I select them. Now I'm going to use that little tick this time to accept the entry, so click on the tick. And it puts the number 1 in there, and in the formula bar you will see the formula that we've just created, or the calculation we've created. So the critical thing here is that we've used cell references rather than numbers. So on the screen we see the result of the calculation, the formula bar shows the calculation behind that result. So let's move on and do the other calculations then. So I'm going to click into cell F2 now. And so it's equals on the keyboard, click on the value contained in cell C2, so put C2 in the formula, press the star sign or the multiply symbol on the keyboard, and then click on the second value, click on that little tick to accept, and we get the correct result 100. So moving down then to F3, so it's equals again on the keyboard. Click the first value, this time it's the plus symbol on the keyboard, second value, and this time I'll press the enter key and we get the result 20. And finally equals on the keyboard for the subtraction. Click on the first value, subtraction symbol on the keyboard, second value in cell E4 there, press the enter key again and we get 0. 10 minus 10 is indeed 0. The reason that we use the cell reference is that if any of these calculations now changes, or any of the original values changes, the result will also change. So if I change this cell in E4 to say 5 instead of 10, so just type 5, press enter, you'll see the calculation updates automatically to change the result. And we could do the same thing in the next one above, so if I change that to 50 instead of 10, we get the answer 60. And if we change the second 10 in the multiplication to an 8, we should get 80, which we do. And if we say 75 divided by 10, we get the result 7.5. And that's the fundamental thing to understand about spreadsheets, is that when you create those calculations, and if I just click on any one of those formulas again, this is why we use cell references as opposed to numbers. We can use numbers instead of cell references, but it won't work correctly. So if I just delete that calculation out of F1 and we recreate it, so equals on the keyboard, and this time I'm going to type in the numbers. So I'm going to type 75 divided by 10, press the enter key, and we get the same result. That's great. But how about if we now change this value in C1, so somebody comes along and changes that to 50? Well, clearly that's a problem. So 50 divided by 10 isn't 7.5. So let's just fix that by, again, deleting equals on the keyboard, click the value in the cell, divide on the keyboard, click the value in the second cell, press enter, and we now have the correct result. So let's go on and look at some more examples. Here we have another set of examples. As you can see, our first one is an addition. So here we have some petty cash receipts, and we're going to work out the total first of all. So click in the cell where the total needs to go. This is cell B8. Press the equals key to begin the calculation. And I can click on the first item, press the plus key, click on the second item, press the plus key again, and click on the third value. So that's gathered all the items together in a formula, equals B4 plus B5 plus B6. In other words, 3 plus 16 plus 22. Let's click on that little tick there, and we get the result 41. And again, the nice thing about any Excel calculation that's linked to data is that if we have a problem with one of our original numbers, let's say paperclips goes up to 6, you will see that the result automatically updates to 44. Okay, so moving along then to subtraction. Again, click in the cell where the result needs to go, and this time we have a calculation that needs the discount taking off the original price. So again, equals on the keyboard, click on the original price, minus on the keyboard, click on the discount value. This time I'll just press the enter key, and you can see the result there. If I just move back to the cell, remember you can always check in the formula bar to see the actual calculation behind the result. So moving along to the multiplication example, you're probably getting the hang of it by now. So equals to begin, click on the quantity in this case, press the multiply key on the keyboard, the star sign, click on the price per unit, and then again just press the enter key. Now we get 391.6 as the result. Come along to the final example, and this is a division calculation. So again, click the cell we want the result to appear in, equals on the keyboard, click on the prize money value in this case, divide on the keyboard, the / key, click on the number of lottery winners in this case, 8, press the enter key, and we see that each person will be receiving 625 whatevers, dollars, pounds, it doesn't really matter. So there are 4 examples: an addition, subtraction, a multiplication and a division calculation, and how you create those formulas, those calculations in Excel. So now we've seen how to create these basic calculations. Let's go back to our original spreadsheet and create the calculations for that example. So here we are back in our example spreadsheet that we'll be building throughout this course. And we now need to apply some calculations here. So I'm going to click into the first cell underneath the income label. That's into cell D3. And press the equals key on the keyboard, and we'll work out the calculation that we need to do. And it's a simple multiplication. So I'm going to click on the value in the rental price column, press multiply on the keyboard, click on the value in the rentals column, and that is the calculation, equals B3 multiplied by C3. Press the enter key, and that gives us £9.75 as the result. So I'll do that calculation one more time. Equals on the keyboard, click on the price, multiply on the keyboard, click on the rental quantity, and this time I'll click on the little tick up there, which is a very similar action to pressing the enter key, and you'll see we get the result in the cell. And again, remember, in the formula bar you will see the actual calculation behind the result. And again, notice that we're using cell references in the calculation, not the numbers. And the reason for that, as you now know, is that if any of those numbers update, if we need to change the rental price or the quantity updates, the calculation result will automatically update as well. So I can illustrate that fairly simply. If I simply change the rental value for Ben Hur from 9 to 10, you'll see the income update to 25 from 22.5. Now, creating these calculations one by one is a bit tedious, especially if you have a long list of calculations to create. But what I'm going to do here is select both of these calculations, actually. Click and drag down and press delete, and then come back to the cell for the first calculation. And what I'm going to do here is show you how in actuality you would create your list of calculations. One thing to bear in mind for Excel is that in virtually all circumstances you only ever need to create one calculation, and then you can copy that down or copy that across to fill in the remaining cells. So for instance here I have to fill in calculations for cells from D3 down to D9, but I only need to create a calculation in cell D3, and we'll show you that right now. So equals on the keyboard, click on my rental price, multiply on the keyboard, click on rental quantity, and now I'm going to click on the tick to accept it, and then put the mouse pointer at the bottom right of the cell and I get the black cross, and then I can click and drag down, and that will drag that formula. Now I know nothing appears to be happening at the moment, there's a sort of a grey outline. As soon as I release the mouse button, Excel automatically places the calculation into each of those cells for me. The important thing to notice here is that if I come back to the first cell, D3, look in the formula bar, it says B3 times C3. Press the down arrow key and come to the next row, it says B4 times C4, and again move down, B5 times C5. So you'll see what's happening is that as the formula copies down, Excel updates for the relevant row, which is good. This is what we want to have happen. It wouldn't be very good if it simply copied the row 3 formula to every other row, because we would obviously have the same results in every cell. So Excel cleverly updates the formula depending on whether we move down rows or across cells. When you move down rows, Excel updates the row number. So in this case it goes B5, B6, B7, etc. So as I continue down here, you can see the cell references have updated correctly, so the calculation does apply to the relevant row of information. Now there is one final trick I'll show you here. If I select all the cells below D3, so D4 to D9, delete on the keyboard, click into that cell D3 again, and I'll show you a much quicker way of filling in the remaining cells. So I've created my first calculation, again put the mouse pointer at the bottom right of that cell, this time double click. And when you double click, Excel automatically runs the formula all the way down the column until it finds a blank row, and then it stops, so it doesn't go zooming off into the distance. And that's a nice quick way of creating formulas for your spreadsheets. Okay, I'll just click away there to deselect, and I'll save by simply clicking the save button there, and that will overwrite the previous version. That concludes this first look at Excel calculations, and in the next tutorial we're going to start looking at functions. So thank you for watching this, hope you found something useful in there, and see you next time.